There we go. All right, so my name is Michaela and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a program coordinator at UT for me, and I am currently going to support students in the college education and college natural science and biology majors. I have a history working in financial wellness and financial aid, and now I'm really excited to support students in this role. And then I'll pass it to my colleague Jonathan to introduce himself real quick.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan Ferguson.
Okay, yeah, so if you weren't able to check in at the beginning using the QR code, just feel free to come grab us at the end and we can help you check in. We'll have an exit survey at the end as well that will enter you into a raffle to win a goodie basket with some swag, so feel free to fill that out at the end. So it's some good stuff. So yeah, we are UT for Me, powered by Dell Scholars, and we are partnering with Texas Financial Wellness to deliver this budgeting workshop for you today. Texas Financial Wellness works on individualized financial wellness to support the overall UT community. And we'll have some information about their services at the end of the presentation as well, so we can utilize their office. And the reason we're having this workshop today is because you're finally on campus. Some of you may be on a college campus for the first time on your own, and you have the expectation to manage your own money. So we want to talk about it with you. We're going to talk about financial aid refunds today, as well as budgeting basics. So some of you may have gotten a refund check, and it may be the most amount of money you've had in your whole life or pretty close to it. And you're going to want to make sure you make smart choices in terms of managing it. So we'll go over financial aid refunds, but then we'll also talk about budgeting basics to make sure that if you have other income coming in throughout the semester, throughout the year, you're able to manage budgeting that income. Then we'll also talk about employment and banking. So if you're interested in finding a job on campus or interested in earning some income through a side hustle or off-campus employment, we'll go over that, as well as banking, to make sure that you can protect your money and make sure that it's safe. And then we also have some tips and tricks on saving and banking and budgeting as well. And of course, we'll save room for questions at the end. If you're attending virtually, please submit your questions in the chat and we'll get to it at the end. For folks attending in person, just save it for the end. And if you're unable to stay until the end of the presentation, this will be recorded and on our YouTube channel, so that way you can go and get your answers to your questions later. So like I said, you got your financial aid refund. You may not be sure what to do with it. You all probably have different varying amounts, but we're going to talk about what financial aid refunds are and how you can make the most of your money. So essentially what a financial aid refund is you take your total expenses owed, and you want to keep in mind all of your bills. So not just your tuition bill, but if you live off campus, if you live on campus, then your housing and dining bill. You also going to want to think about your books and any other bills you might have. You might have different fees if you live in a specific place on campus that have additional fees associated with the housing or things of that nature, or you might have selected a dining plan that's different from maybe what your roommate selected, and it's a different cost. So keep in mind all of your bills, and then what you'll do is subtract that total amount owed from your total financial aid award. You can access your total financial aid award on your cash page under the My Financial Aid tab. If you have an outside scholarship that isn't available there, that you can see, but you know that you got it, it's okay. If you have questions about your total financial aid, you can work with our financial aid counselors, and they'll be able to help you understand that. But you'll just subtract the total financial aid award from your amount owed, and then that's going to give you, if it's a negative number, that means you got a refund check. If it's not a negative number, then that just means that that was the amount left over that you owed. So if you have a negative number, it's a refund check. And how refunds are dispersed is through two ways: direct deposit or via a check in the mail. So direct deposit is really great. It's safe and it's quick and reliable. You can set up direct deposit on your cash page under status and requirements. It's going to be towards the bottom of the page, and it's going to be called direct deposit. It'll be listed as a recommendation rather than a requirement. So You certainly don't have to set up direct deposit, but if you'd like to, you can do that. And then if you don't do direct deposit, then you will be sent your refund check through a check in the mail. And this is gonna go to the mailing address that we have on file. So especially for students who are here for the first time, you may have had your home address. They say you live in Brownsville, Texas. That check's gonna go to Brownsville. You might have to have your family either mail it to you or go home and grab it. So just make sure you can set direct deposit. Probably the safest way to do it, but you certainly don't have to if you don't want to. And then refunds are dispersed at the beginning of every semester, so you'll get one in the fall, and then you have the opportunity to get one in the spring as well. So now we've talked about refund checks, we're gonna go over some budgeting basics. That way you can manage your money, especially if you're holding large quantities of it for the first time. So, kind of similar to how to calculate your refund, the same way you're gonna calculate your budget is you're gonna take your total income and subtract your total expenses. So your total income could be, it could include your refund check, it could include income from a side hustle that you have. So you have like an Etsy page or a Depop page, or you're like doing some maintenance on the side or tutoring people on the side, and you're making consistent income. You can include that as a total income. And then your total expenses, they're gonna vary. There are two different types of expenses that we talk about when we talk about budgeting, and we'll go over that in the next slide. But you're really gonna want to think about your daily living expenses and your regularly occurring bills. So things like rent. So like I said before, there's two types of expenses. The variable expenses are exactly how it sounds. It tends to be infrequent or inconsistent. It can change from time to time. So things like gas or groceries or electricity, they're not always going to be a set amount every single month. So you want to keep that in mind when you're creating your budget for those items. Also, like electricity is kind of unpredictable. You might not know how much electricity you're going to use per month. It's all dependent on the weather or things that you need to use in your household. And then fixed expenses tend to be more consistent or predictable. So things like rent, that's probably, you sign a contract, last 12 months and it's not going to change. Subscription services, these are things that I see students leave out a lot of time. They might not think about, oh yeah, I do have Netflix and Disney Plus and Hulu and Spotify and all that stuff. So subscription services are pretty consistent. And then if you have a car payment or car insurance or loan payments, those are usually pretty consistent too. So that would be considered a fixed expense. And then, oh, the slide is not working. Let's see. Okay, awesome. So steps towards creating your monthly budget is reviewing your previous month expenses. Now, we talked a little bit about banking and we'll dive deeper into it later in the presentation, but a great way to review your previous month expenses is if you have a bank account already and say you're using mobile banking, you should be able to log on and look at the expenses you've used with that specific checking or savings account. So you can review your previous month expenses and then, like we talked about before, calculate your total income. And then you'll want to try to find a way to calculate your total fixed expenses. A great way to do this is using an Excel spreadsheet so you can organize things. And you can use formulas to do the math for you. You'll want to estimate your variable expenses. So you won't necessarily be able to calculate them, but you can kind of create an estimate. You know, if you have an electricity bill, or you know, if you have to get gas for your car, things like that. Or even things like, you know, you're gonna go spend money on coffee or out to eat or something like that. You can estimate your variable expenses that way. And then subtract your fixed and variable expenses from your income. And then if you see that number and it's negative or it's not higher than what you want it to be, you're gonna want to start to think about changes that you can make to determining wants versus needs, and then analyzing those and making adjustments as necessary. So talking about wants versus needs, our wants are desired and not always necessary, and our needs are essential to our success. And for me, they're non-negotiable. So a need like food or toiletries or housing, or if you have a specific medication you have to take consistently from week to week or month to month, those are things that are non-negotiable. Those are things you need to not only survive, but to be successful and be a good student. And your wants might be like a new video game or your favorite coffee shop or luxury clothing, not from the discount section, things like that. So you're gonna wanna think about your wants versus your needs when you're creating your budget, because it can be really easy to overspend on our wants and kind of neglect our needs a little bit. Now, I talk about wants versus needs, and I don't want it to come across like you shouldn't make space for your for your wants, because research shows that when we let our wants suffer, it causes us to splurge unintentionally. So I wouldn't suggest going and saying, I'm not going to go to Starbucks anymore. Because that's not fair to you, and you deserve to go to Starbucks or wherever your favorite cafe is. And so maybe just be more intentional about when you're going to go. Say you have an exam on Friday and you're like, I want to treat myself to this. I want to treat myself to my favorite sandwich from my favorite cafe. Those are times that you can kind of treat yourself for it and still incorporate it so you're fulfilling your wants rather than doing it unintentionally and losing money where you don't want to. And so this is why budgeting is so important, because it can help you set expectations for how much money you can spend on your desired costs. And then specifically for college students, it's really important to keep in mind that when you're budgeting, especially if you're incorporating your refund checks, you're going to want to be budgeting per term. So for fall, that would be about half the month of August through the first part of January. In spring, it would be February to like that first week in May. And also you don't want to forget about the summer months, because you don't want to end up, I've seen students run into situations where they don't want to take out loans for summer classes, but they also don't have a job lined up, and then they don't have money to not only pay for the classes, but they might struggle to find a place to live as well. And so you want to try to be proactive and be prepared. And when you're thinking about budgeting for terms of college student, these are ways that you can do it. So that also kind of leans into how your budgeting might change over time, where as a college student, if you're living on campus and you're relying on a refund check, it might look really different than once you start living off campus and maybe you have a job, or maybe once you graduated and you're no longer receiving, you have different types of income. So we're going to talk about off-campus and on-campus budgeting. For off-campus budgeting, you're going to want to consider rent if you are living in your own space and not with family, or if you're living with family that charges you rent, you're going to want to keep that in mind, and that's going to be one of those fixed expenses. And then also utilities. This is one of those things that you might not think about when you only had experience maybe living on campus and you never had your own electric bill or things of that nature. So keep in mind your utilities and some of those more variable expenses. And then also transportation and parking. Thinking about, do I have a car? How much is it going to cost for me to drive to campus? Do I want to pay for parking on campus? Also, if you want to use the bus, you can use your student ID and it's free. So I highly recommend that because it's trying to save money there. And then you'll also want to think about groceries as well. And making sure that you're providing yourself nutritional food. You don't want to live off of popcorn and ramen like I did when I was in college. You want to make sure that you have those as treats, but you're also making room for eating nutritious food and that you're budgeting for that. And then also books and supplies. Something that I think is really important for all college students to know is that sometimes things happen, things come up. You might think, I bought all my textbooks at the beginning of the semester, and then you could have a situation like me where I was in my week before finals in my senior year and my laptop died and I lost all of my stuff. And thankfully I had it backed up on Google Drive, but I had to go and buy a new laptop. And it was a really big expense that I had to make, but I had to do it because finals week was coming up. So keep in mind for those kind of emergency expenses that can pop up, whether you're on or off campus. If you're living on campus and you're trying to make a budget, you're going to want to think about your books and supplies. So again, those things that could come up down the road, but also the initial expenses. You also want to think about laundry, how you're going to, budget your money to do that. It's one of those things that you think, oh, it's not that much money, but if you do laundry every week, then that's going to add up over the course of a month or over a year. You're also going to want to think about experiences. You want to make sure that you allow yourself to, network, make friends, get to know people. And sometimes that might cost money. So you want to make sure that you're budgeting for that. And then incidental expenses. So say you lost your ID and you need it to get into your residence hall, or you need it to visit the dining hall. You're going to need to go and get a new ID. That's $10. So you're going to want to kind of have like a mini emergency savings for things like that. or something like a parking ticket as well. Like little things that could potentially come up and cost money. You're gonna wanna have what we would almost call like a rainy day savings fund. Okay, so we talked about a lot of stuff. Now we're gonna move into employment in banking. So if you're interested in having other streams of income other than if you have a refund check, we're gonna go and talk about that and how you can protect your money as well. So student employment and career development on campus, we have a lot of resources for you. If you ever have questions, you can contact your UT for Me program coordinator, and we can always direct you in the right space if we are unable to fulfill the issue or question that you have. But a really great office to utilize, I used it as a graduate student here, is Texas Career Engagement. They're literally on this floor, this is their classroom, and they're really useful for helping you create resumes or edit your resumes. If you are in your second or third year and you're starting to think about what that transition into your career field is going to look like, they can help you potentially look up some businesses that you might want to work for. And so they're a really great place to utilize for professional development or making sure that you're able to find employment on or beyond your career. And Handshake is a really good resource. If you haven't used it yet, you should be able to log on with your UTEID and password, and you'll be able to look for on-campus employment there. If you don't have work study, I would still say you should look to see if there are offices hiring students that don't have work study. But also, if you don't end up wanting to work on campus or you're unable to, there's so many businesses around here for off-campus employment that would provide a lot of professional development and also just like networking and making friends in the like community. With all of this though, comes into play time management. You know, you want to make sure that you're managing your time accordingly. You don't want to stretch yourself thin because at the end of the day, what's most important is that you're a student first and your needs need to be met in that way. And you can do so by budgeting and making sure that your finances are taken care of. But you don't want to stretch yourself too thin either. You want to make sure you're managing your time accordingly. And what plays into that is self-care. You want to make sure that your mental health is taken care of. And like I said, not stretching yourself too thin. It can be really easy to say yes to a bunch of things as you first come to college. Or maybe you said yes to a bunch of new things when you first came to college. A couple years have gone by and you want to add more stuff to your plate. Just make sure you're taking care of yourself. And if you feel like you need support, you can always reach out to UT for Me. Now, this is just some simple information. If you want to take a picture of it, of the slide, you're welcome to, but just so you know, because this is something I didn't know until I started working in the financial wellness industry, was credit unions. I didn't know they existed. When I was growing up, my dad used a bank, my mom used a bank, and it was something I was unfamiliar with. We didn't have credit unions in my town. So a credit union is nonprofit and a member-owned institution. One right across the street is University Federal Credit Union. So if you ever have questions about setting up an account, you can go to a credit union similar to UFCU and talk to them about it. Banks are for-profit and they're privately owned or publicly traded. To be honest, like I've used both credit unions and banks. I've had good experience with both of them. So it's really up to you. Just do your research and find your facts and find a good bank for you if you don't have one yet. Okay, and then managing your money. You're gonna wanna set up a bank account. How we talked about refund checks earlier and direct deposit, you have to have a bank account in order to utilize direct deposits benefits. So I kind of mentioned UFCU earlier. Just make sure that when you go to set up a bank account that they're not gonna charge you money for it. There are bank accounts that can charge you money, but you should be able to find free accounts. They might have a minimum requirement of funds you need to have in the account when you open it, like maybe a $25 minimum. So just be prepared for that, but you shouldn't have to pay money for your bank account. And then mobile banking is really accessible. I mentioned that earlier, but it's a really good way to keep track of your spending. If you don't want to use something like a checkbook ledger or an Excel sheet or a notepad where you're keeping track of your expenses, you can use mobile banking to keep track of your expenses and also to transfer money from one account to the next. And then you can consider having multiple accounts. So you could have a checking and a savings account. Typically what will happen when you open up a bank account is they'll have you open up a savings account, and then you can add a checking account and you'll get a debit card, which you can use to make your purchases with a debit card. And then, like I said, set up direct deposit on cash, and then routinely review your budget and adjust as needed. So I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about the basics of budgeting, making sure that you're making adjustments when necessary. If you have expenses, maybe you notice that things are getting really expensive and you need to go back and make some changes, or maybe you notice, oh, I'm really saving a lot of money. Maybe I need to go in and look and see, like, if I want to invest this or if I want to use it for something that I need. So now we're going to move into the second to last portion of the session, which is tips and tricks, talking about ways that you can for making and bills. A tip and trick is separating your money with different checking accounts. So these are just suggestions. You don't have to do all of these. You don't have to have 5 different accounts. This is why mobile banking is really useful. I was able to make different accounts to organize, putting money away for student loan payments, putting money away for car payments, and putting money away for rainy day savings. So you can do things like that for bills or your variable expenses. Maybe you say, I want to organize my money for coffee by putting it in a specific account, and I'm only going to put, $50 in there a month or $20 in there a month, however much you want to put. That could be how you organize your funds and a way for you to budget intentionally. You could also kind of go the want versus needs route. So maybe you have a specific checking account that is for groceries and gas, things like that. And then also a really great tip is setting up auto pay. That way you don't miss a payment. You don't want your electricity or Wi-Fi to get turned off. You don't want to have to call them and wait on hold to have them turn it back on. So setting up auto pay is a great way to avoid missing payments, and it's relatively easy to use. You should be able to do that by logging onto your system, whether it's like your electric bill or your phone bill, things like that, or even if you're paying rent. Okay. And then tips and tricks for cutting costs. One that's really important, and it's like probably my favorite and least favorite, is meal planning. I love cooking, but I also love eating out and enjoying a meal with friends. But meal planning really does save me a lot of money. Sometimes I get in my head like, oh no, it really doesn't. Like I spend the same amount when I go out to eat than when I go grocery shopping. But that's the whole point. If I'm spending $50 when I go out to eat and $50 when I'm grocery shopping, I'm getting one meal when I go out to eat, but I'm probably getting 5 or 6 solid meals when I go grocery shopping. So think about meal planning and organizing your pantry to make sure that you're getting nutritious food and you're able to stretch the different things you have in your pantry across several different meals is really important. It'll help you save money in the long run. UT Outpost is a really great resource as well. You're able to go there, it's on campus, and look for groceries and things of that nature. So go ahead and check it out. Just walk over there and see what they have to offer. And then something I like to suggest is college students, you're probably drinking a lot of caffeine, so try to make it at home, whether that's tea or coffee or whatever. You might think, and I think what we get confused is like the initial upfront cost of buying groceries for $100. Seems like a lot, but then when you break it down, it's really not. Same thing goes with coffee. You might think, oh, I want to spend like $4 on a coffee every day, whereas if you went and bought the stock coffee and your favorite creamer, it's probably going to be $10, but then you're going to be able to get 5 or 6 coffees out of it, and it's actually going to be way cheaper to make it at home. Also, you can find affordable housing options early, so kind of get a head start on that within the next couple of months. It's a really good idea to get a head start on that, and you can utilize UT's off-campus housing office. And then also, my favorite thing to do is thrift shopping. That was a way that I made friends in college. We would go to our favorite thrift stores and look for clothes or decor. Sometimes we get stuff, sometimes we would just go to look. And that's a really great way to save money and be sustainable and repurpose some used items. And then saving money. So something that I did when I got my first job when I was 16 was I told myself I'm going to put 20% of every single paycheck I get into a savings account that I'm not touching. And I did that to the T. I remember one time I got a $15 paycheck and I put $3 in that savings account. I was really strict about it and it paid off, and it's the reason I care so much about financial wellness now. You don't have to make your goal 20%. You can do something as small as 5%, whatever you're comfortable with. Or if you have larger income coming in and fewer expenses, you can do something larger than that. You can do 50% if you wanted to. So just create goals, whether that's how much you want to save or how you want to save it, or even where you want to put your savings or the goal of your savings account. What are you saving towards? Are you saving for an emergency fund? Are you saving to buy your first car? Things like that. Another really cool thing is Roth IRAs. I feel like young people don't know enough about this stuff, and I wish I had learned about it sooner. I started my Roth IRA when I was 22, and I wish I started it when I was like a teenager, but I didn't know about it. The earlier you start a Roth IRA, the more time your money has to accumulate. So what I mean by that is if you invest money into a savings account that grows over time with a higher interest rate, if you start that in your 20s, it's going to have 10 years more to accumulate than if you start in your 30s. So when you're thinking about investments or something like a Roth IRA, which is a retirement account, it's better to start sooner rather than later because your money has more time to grow, which means you won't have to invest more down the road. It'll be less painful when you're in your 30s. And then spend with cash to avoid accidental overspending. This could be a great way to budget some of those desired items that you might want to spend money on. If it's like, I want to treat myself to a new video game every 2 months, maybe putting that money into envelope, that cash into an envelope and keeping it somewhere safe, or whatever that item might look like for you. That way you can avoid just swiping the card so easily and getting your item. You can be more intentional by using cash. Also, you can try savings app for tips and insight. I can't advise on any in particular, but I've used a bunch of different ones and they're all really unique and helpful. So go ahead and do your research. You can look stuff up on YouTube, or you can just go to your app store and search for stuff. Okay, so pat yourself on the back because that was a lot of information and I'm really proud of you for coming today. This is such an important topic, and the fact that this is like only the second week of the school year and you're learning about this stuff is really important. So good job. Just gonna wrap up with some final pieces of information so that way you can be successful for the next year and beyond. So if you need more financial aid, you can visit Texas One Stop's website to look at their special circumstances appeals. Essentially what these are is to get additional financial aid. Maybe your parent lost a job for the tax year that you used on the FAFSA, and so the income was different than what was reported on your FAFSA. That could be a reason you could do an appeal. Or if your cost of attendance exceeds what we budgeted at and you need more financially to cover those expenses, that's another thing you could consider. So if you think you're in this situation, go and visit Texas One Stop website. You can also make an appointment with Willow or Jonathan. They would be happy to help you kind of understand what that looks like for you. And then what if you need more assistance, outside of financial aid, or say you submitted an appeal and it got denied? You can look at all of these different resources such as UT for Me emergency funds. And if y'all want to take photos of this with your phone for later reference, go ahead, or if you want to write it down. UT for Me emergency fund can be a good way. If you have an emergency come up like a medical bill or some accident happens, please reach out to us. We're willing to help you work through that UT emergency fund application. Also, Student Emergency Services is a great resource. They have their own website and you can look at emergency fund applications there. Like I said before, the UT Outpost, I recommend just going and looking. There's nothing like getting the experience of going and looking at it yourself. Also, a lot of college students are eligible for SNAP benefits. So this is how you could kind of, get some coupons or find ways to save money on grocery shopping. So you can see your eligibility by calling 211. And I don't think it's something to be ashamed of. Like if you qualify, you should take advantage of it because it'll be really helpful. And then you can look for community assistance at the website listed on there as well. And for future years financial aid, if you're looking for more scholarships, which I always recommend, if there's a scholarship that you can apply for it. You can do that on your cash page. The continuing student application is what you'll be eligible to apply for this year, and it should open up around November 1st. So just monitor your cash page around that time. It'll be under the status and requirements section. And then you can also visit the UT for Me Canvas page under financial aid coaching to find out more info on how we can support you as a resource. And then if you want help with budgeting, you can schedule an appointment with your UT for Me financial aid counselors, or you can go ahead and visit Texas Financial Wellness's website. They have opportunities for one-on-one appointments, and these are certified personal finance counselors, so they're really eager to help y'all, and you can go ahead and scan the QR code to visit their website, or you can just go at financialwellness.utexas.edu. And then if you ever want to contact us, you can email us here. You're going to get a lot of communication in the next couple of weeks, as you probably already have that from this email address, and also saying you can contact us here. And that's what we have for you today. Please fill out the exit survey before you leave, but also we're going to field questions now. So does anyone in our in-person audience have questions?
Where can we find more information about those IRAs?
Roth IRAs, you can learn about it on YouTube. You can Google it. I would recommend setting up an appointment with a financial wellness counselor too, if you wanted. They can't necessarily tell you which one to subscribe to or make an account with, but they can teach you more about Roth IRAs and what that might look like for you. Yeah. Any other questions in person? Yeah.
So I'm not on my parents' like healthcare plan anymore. Do you know where I could start to like maybe find something where I can like get my like, healthcare plan?
That's a really good question. You should be able to navigate UT Health Services to look for some information there. Would you have any other recommendations, Jonathan or Shelby or anyone?
I want to say that you can look for health insurance plans through like, it's a federal website that I've come across from the federal government. It's a little tricky to navigate, but you can Google like healthcare plans. And it'll pop up. If you send us an email in the general YouTube for me email address and we'll be like, hey, Shelby has a presentation today. Talk about healthcare, I can find it for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions in person? Okay, do we have any virtual questions from us?
So as of right now, we don't have any virtual questions, but as we continue building in-person questions, if you have questions virtually, you can go ahead and submit those by using the chat feature on Zoom. If anyone is having trouble finding that, just shoot a message over and we can get that figured out for you. But as we're going through the question and answer in person, if you have questions virtually, we can get those answered as well. So again, I'll go ahead and open up the floor again for anyone that might have questions in person. And remember, you can ask questions, both Michaela and I and Shelby, we all have experience in the financial aid industry, so no question is off limits. So feel free to go ahead and ask any questions that you might have. We can also give you a few more seconds to think about it if you need, but we're here to answer any questions that you might have regarding it. Yeah, go ahead.
I had never heard about UT Outpost and I was wondering what that is exactly.
Sure. Shelby, do you know more about UT Outpost?
Sure, so UT Outpost is basically like a food pantry here on campus. They have a variety of like food items as well as like body wash, shampoo and everything. Their hours are a little limited and they kind of fluctuate, so you might want to check their website to see when they're open. They also have what's called a career closet. So if any of you are getting to the point where you need to have a job interview or a professional event, networking event, y'all can go there and rent out professional clothing basically. So they're a really fantastic resource.
I believe that they are able from management big country with UT Atlas today. I was checking this out, I think they are to this, but I think they are today.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I got here a little bit late, so I don't know if y'all talked about it already, but I think here's the little part about investing. And I know like, I would say it's very important to consider the part now rather than later. But that's my question. Where would you start?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely suggest, you can do your own research, but if that seems like a really daunting task, which like it is, so it's okay if it feels that way. I would suggest setting up an appointment with a financial counselor, either with, you know, Jonathan or Willow, or, with Texas Financial Wellness too, because they're equipped to like teach you more about that stuff one-on-one, in a more in-depth way, that way you can actually like take away some stuff and look into it. What I had mentioned was the Roth IRA, which is a retirement investment that is a personal retirement investment. Typically, once you get a job after college, there are IRAs like a 401k that your employer might invest in. But the Roth IRA is a personal investment. So, but basically with that, it's just there's people who kind of like, you invest money into it and then they'll try to make money off of your money. So it's like making money for you without thinking much about it. And it's a really good idea, but it's important to know about it before you do it. So definitely set up an appointment with a financial wellness counselor.
Where can you find that information for like schedule an appointment?
Yeah. So if you want to do it through UT for me, it'll be through your campus page. Okay. If you wanted to visit Texas Financial Wellness, they have a website. If you Google Texas Financial Wellness, you should be able to find it. But yeah, you can do it through UT for me as well.
And like, say we set up an appointment with someone, maybe just have a bill of credit. Because that's part of it.
Yeah. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we absolutely.
Can you unmute yourself, Michaela?
All right, can you hear me?
There you go.
So yes, again, we can teach you how to build credit, myself or Willow, if you schedule a UT for me appointment. If you schedule a Texas Financial Wellness appointment, they also are able to help you learn how to build credit, what the different types of credit, et cetera. And as I was saying at the end of that, sometimes we may need more than one session to do so because there's a lot that goes into this. We want to make sure that you have all the information that you need. We don't want to neglect anything. And so if you feel like you'll need more than one appointment, then go ahead and schedule back to back. If we think that we may need to schedule more time with you, then we'll schedule a follow-up appointment with you after our initial appointment to discuss how credit works. But we recommend go ahead if you can, if you have time, to schedule those back-to-back appointments. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We did have a question in the virtual chat.
Sure.
I'm gonna go ahead and answer it. See if I can find it again. So it says, how would we get our financial refund? And when can we expect it? Is it something that we have to request, or is it automatically deposited to the bank account instead of cash? So that's a really good question. Refunds were sent out about 2 weeks ago, actually 2 weeks ago to the day. If you have not yet gotten your refund, that means that something either A, might have happened in processing, or B, you have outstanding requirements on cash that need to be handled before we can get you your refund. So we are able sometimes to show you your financial aid offer, but we can't show you your refund, or we can't send it to you until you get those outstanding requirements completed. and all that documentation submitted, et cetera, that you need to get your refund. So if any of you, and our, person that asked the question in the chat, if you haven't gotten your refund yet, then check cash first. If all of your requirements are satisfied, then schedule an appointment with, Willow and I so that we can figure out what might be going on, because there might be something that went wrong in the process. And we also have a follow-up question to that. If I just set up my direct deposit, is it likely it could have been sent via a check? I believe it might be possible, because after, it takes a while for the direct deposit method to process if you just did it like 1 or 2 days ago. And so they may have detected initially that you wanted a check, so they sent a check out to you. Remember, as Michaela said, if your address isn't updated, unfortunately, you know, we're probably not going to send it to the right place, so it'll come back to us, and you know, we'll have to get with you to get the correct address to send it. But if your address is on file and you just set up direct deposit, it is possible we might have sent you a check. If you want to know more about where your money is, if you just set up direct deposit, also contact Willow and I. I'll send our I'll post our email addresses in the chat, and I'll also make sure that you all have it in person before you leave today. So
I have something I can add to that.
oh, go ahead.
So if you're trying to figure out where your money is, you can check where's my check. It should be on your UT Direct page. You might even be able to get there from your cash page. Don't quote me on that, but go to your UT Direct, check where's my check. You'll be able to see the check number, the amount of the check, and where the check was sent to. So if it's direct deposit, it'll either say direct deposit or your bank account, or it will have the address that it was sent to. And then you can go through your settings on your cash page or in UT Direct and update the address if it needs to be updated. And if you got a check sent to you to a specific mailing address that, say you don't live there or you don't have anyone there, that could get you the check in a timely manner that you need it, you can contact payment information and they should be able to cancel the check and redistribute the funds through direct deposit. Just make sure you have direct deposit set up before you do that. So if you go to payment info, UT Austin, their website will have their contact information. I would recommend emailing them with your UTE ID. All right, I think we're gonna conclude because this was really good and you all had amazing questions. If you haven't submitted the exit survey yet and you end up having another question, you can go ahead and add it there. Or you can just email it to us, but we will be drawing the raffle. Anyone who filled out the survey, whether you were in person or virtual, will be entered into it. So we're gonna go ahead and do that, and we will end up texting the winners to come and get your goodie basket. It'll be located in our office across the way over here. But thank you so much for coming, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Sure, here, let me go. So you can contact us at UT for me right there. And you should be able to go on your campus page too and navigate to like about your the officers about contact them that way. You can also set up a like there. 45 days after first class. And then stop recording.